I'm Kyle Adams, and today we have a special guest, Matt Hill, a Utah area Flat Earth captain. This is a title that we give to area coordinators for Flat Earth meet and greets. Just last December, I was able to attend one of his meet and greets out in Draper, Utah, with the Flat Earther Taboo Conspiracy, and we had over 100 different people show up. It was amazing. So, go ahead and how long have you been a Flat Earther for?
Great question. It was back in, I'm going to say January of 2015. January 2016. I was chatting with a coworker and we were understanding each other so well. We were talking about, 9/11 and moon landings and on the same page about, a couple different things. And then she brought up how the earth was flat, and I was like, you mean how it's, an oblate spheroid? Like it's, it's a little bit squishier, because I knew all that. I had, was up on that. And she's like, no, like actually flat. And then I was like, oh man, I can't talk to you anymore. Like, like we have nothing in common now. Like it was just, but then I think that prompted a YouTube search, and was a closet flat earther for, several years after that, doing all the research.
Who is this that got you into this? You said a girl?
It was a coworker. I was down in St. George, and it was funny. We just were on the same page with a lot of other conspiracies. Yeah, I was down in St. George at the time. So
cool. I wonder if she came to any of our meet and greets. Did you see her at any of them?
No, I looked up. I didn't know her all that well. We were coworkers for maybe 3 months or so. I can't even remember her name. But when the Flat Earth app came out, I checked to see if she was on there so that I could thank her. But I didn't see her there.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Which channels were you really following a whole lot at the time? Everyone likes to know kind of who was like.
I wish I could go back. Yeah, I wish I could go back and watch some of the old videos. Back then, it was before the cream rose to the top. Yeah, I'll put it that way. Yeah. It was, I remember getting information that now I know is from the Flat Earth Society, which is not necessarily accurate. And I was like, wow, do you think the Earth really is rising? Because there was other truths that I was learning, and so you would hear this new information, and it was just mind-boggling, and like trying to. At that point, you've thrown everything out the window, and you're starting fresh. So you're hearing these new theories, like the Earth is rising at 9.8 meters per second squared, and that's why everything is falling toward the Earth. And it's just like I remember really studying those things out in my mind, but there was just so much garbage mixed with the gold, hearing like theories of when the sun sets, it's actually going through portals and showing up on the other side of the Earth. There was just all that, and I gravitated toward Jeranism. He was the one that I would listen to most consistently. But of course, all the other big names, Mark Sargent, Eric Dubay, back in the day. Back
in the day, there were so many that's hard to keep them all straight because you're just trying to learn their names in the first place.
Yeah, it's a completely new world at the time, and like there was one guy named Tiger Dan, and then all of a sudden, like he kind of jumped ship and was like went back on a lot of the stuff that he said, and I was like, oh, like it kind of like. Not rocked my foundation, but it was like I had never heard anybody like going back to globe theory, and I don't really know his story all that well. And then another, like following all the drama with with Jeranism, and the Flat Earth asshole Jake the asshole now, but like there were these constant like debunk videos and debunking the debunkers and the debunk for that debunking video and. You're just following the drama back and forth. It was interesting and like trying to like soak up everything. And I was always like looking up the videos, like how to disprove the flat Earth, like wanting to make sure that I was hearing the arguments from the other side. That I wasn't just completely naive. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you there. So like it sounds like you've been in this for quite a while now. Would you say it's like back before like 2018 or?
Yeah, so I would say in 2016, by middle of the year, like there was one day where after I watched, like 6 hours of videos and my mind was completely blown. I was in that phase still. I remember like getting down a piece of paper and writing like all the things that I would have to like give up essentially to believe in flat Earth. And there were so many proofs that I was seeing that I just wanted to have an open mind. And so I like wrote down on a paper like, gravity isn't what I was told it was. NASA, I never necessarily believed in the moon landings. I had my skepticism there, but it's one thing to think that, maybe they faked the moon landing videos, and it's a totally another thing to say the entire construct of space is not what I thought it was. And all of these, I had spent a lot of time watching documentaries and reading books and like trying to understand black holes and quasars and galaxies, and just it was fascinating to me. But imagination land can be fascinating. So
it's amazing how shallow you realize your old foundation was. Everyone just told you these things and expected you to believe them, but you never really saw the underlying foundation behind those claims. You know what I mean?
Right. It didn't feel shallow at the time.
Yeah.
But it did feel like I was stupid because I would take so much time to try to understand them. And like, I remember discussing those vanishing points of the black hole. When you get to a certain level, then light can no longer escape. And like, I knew theoretically I could understand the concept, but like when I would really try to understand and think about it, I was like, I just don't really get it. My ex-wife would laugh about it because sometimes at night, like she's like, what are you doing? Like we're both just in bed, and I'm like, I just need a few things, and I go and grab an apple and an orange and a golf ball and a flashlight. I'm like, I'm just trying to understand shadows right now. She's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. Like I just want to like understand like eclipses. And at the time, I was active LDS and was reading in some of the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price, the scriptures, and like I was like, I just want to understand, like creation seems important to me, and I want to understand like what they were saying. And they would go over words like firmament, and I'm like, completely over my head, just didn't grasp what that was. But I did want to try to understand the day and the night and the shadows and the orbits and the eclipses. And I was like, she's like, did you figure it out? And I'm like, no, not really. Like like I was trying to make it scientific, like repeatable, the shadows that I was seeing. Then when she's like, did you figure it all out? And I'm like I still was like left empty because it still didn't translate to the real world and our moon and our sun, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was just thinking there about how it all seems so vast and deep when you just point out all the different scientists rather than their actual claim. And, it's just because, it's in so many different textbooks. And so therefore it feels so deep. And then all of a sudden it finally gets challenged. And that's when everything shakes and it's like, whoa, why can't it support this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. If science gets all of this credit for so many discoveries, and it's actually like technology is improving, not necessarily science. They're not. I mean, there's kind of an overlap there. But then when you take these concepts with space and try to apply them in the real world, they fall apart. They're not repeatable. And it's like, this only works on NASA's budget. If you have billions of dollars, you can repeat these experiments. But if you try to repeat them without that, they don't work. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily scientific. The scientific community should have other ways of it needs to be repeatable. It needs to be repeatable and verifiable. And if the only way that it's repeatable is through NASA, then that's not repeatable. That's not scientific.
You can only repeat it if you belong to a very specific group. And
you have to have over $1 billion on your own to try to repeat this experiment. So just trust us.
Yeah.
No. I could trust them if it wasn't obvious that they had lied on so many other things, and their videos were fraudulent, and they had good answers, and they had good video quality, and there's so many. It's not that I'm like completely opposed to believing someone else's science. That's not it at all. When someone's science is obviously shoddy and they're pushing an agenda, at that point you stop automatically believing them and you start investigating each scientific study, each scientific claim. And it's like, okay, well, they can send laser beams to the moon and get back a signal, and that's how there's proof that we landed on the moon. It's like that's not repeatable. Like, I need to be able to do that. Can I do that? And it's like, no. Only we can do that. Okay, well, I'm not going to believe your story anymore.
Yeah. And then looking into the further details and the history of that and finding out that we could do that before they ever even made the claim to do it in the first place, it's like, okay, so it gets a little bit more suspicious after that.
Yes.
Yeah. So was the flat earth kind of a big deal breaker when it came to you and your ex-wife there?
No, surprisingly, she's open-minded. She was never really that interested in studying it on her own. We would discuss it a lot because it was so important to me. Yeah. And so I would consider her a globe skeptic. Which, that's all I could really ask for. Sometimes she would be like, wow, like it really does make more sense thinking about it being flat. And so there wasn't tension.
Okay, so it wasn't about that. That's okay.
No.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Good question, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's awake in a lot of ways, like, on vaccines and other, conspiracies. We were on the same page. And that one, she, like, if I would say, hey, I really want you to watch this video and, can talk about it, then she would. But if I didn't, like, give her a specific video, she didn't, go research it on her own. She just wasn't that interested. And I couldn't understand that. I'm like, this is everything. Like, this is our world. This is like, it's just like all consuming on my mind. And she's like, yeah, no, it's not that important to me. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. My wife is kind of in the same boat there. She's not quite as, just sucked into everything as I am. It's just like, for me, this is like edge of my seat kind of, I'm glued, and I'm obsessed with it. Yeah. But she's like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. It's interesting, but I'm not that interested in it. So,
yeah.
But she's very supportive all the same. And so,
I've noticed. Yeah, she helped you with the videos, and she came to the meetup, and it was fun to meet her. Yeah.
Yeah. So, definitely love her. So, how about the rest of your family? Have they been pretty supportive about it? For me, it's kind of like a taboo topic. And so everyone else is like, oh, there he goes again. And so, yeah.
Well, my mom, when she was in junior high, read a book about the earth being hollow. So I kind of grew up, like, I remember her being like, isn't it so interesting that, like, pictures of the globe, like, there's always clouds over the North and South Pole. So I did kind of grow up with the mindset, and having since learned about it, I still think that there could be, like, there's more to the earth than even just it being flat. Like, and there's extraterrestrials, like, that are here in the flat earth system. Like, there's just some interesting things. But so I always had the idea that the earth was hollow. It was like an orange with the peel, but the inside there was a sun in the middle, and that's what created Aurora Borealis. And Admiral Byrd, before he had explored the South Pole, he had gone to North Pole and had, these accounts of meeting people who were bigger, and, having researched it since, it sounds like those accounts were most likely fabricated, or weren't written by his hand. But so in my family, my mom is open-minded and will research those things. And every time I would bring it up, she's like, well, it can't be flat, Matt, because it's hollow. So just within, like, I'm going to say the last 6 months, she's like, wow. She's like starting to get on board. And even my dad, I was really surprised. He's like, so all these different things are fake? Like trying to just understand that point of view. I have a big family, and most of them are pretty mainstream. I did bring up, flat Earth I was kind of in the closet. I had talked to a couple of my siblings individually about it, and then there was a family reunion, and there was like 20 of us there, and I kind of tested the waters. And one of my brother-in-laws, he's a doctor, so he feels he's well educated. He's a really smart man, but he didn't like that I was presenting that theory to his kids. That's when he like needed to step in and really shut down that conversation, because he thought that it would. This was my brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
And he, I mean, if I had been discussing it with him, I think it would have been a different conversation. But because his kids were there, and at the time, 3 of them were teenagers,
really defensive.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I don't want to like push it too far, but everybody knows that I still believe it. Like, I think they kind of thought that they would like come and go, like.
Yeah.
Okay, like I've researched it.
This is just a phase. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Like, went through that. This is just a phase.
He'll come back.
Yeah. And then
that's so
years
funny.
go by, and another year goes by.
Yeah, it's been 2016 to now. 6 years, and not only have I not given up on it, but now I'm organizing the events, and I have hundreds of contacts in my phone for other flat earthers, and people contact me and want to get my opinion on things. And I've started. I want to be more involved in the community. I feel like it's a calling that I want to pursue. And so I started. I've recorded about 10 episodes of a podcast, but I want to have it just a little bit more established before I launch the episodes and everything. But it's a big part of what I'm wanting to do right now.
Cool. So you don't have any YouTube channel or anything like that right now? It's you're just working on
everything's in the works. Yeah, I really enjoy creating content. I look at it so differently. I'm able to, like, when I'm just watching someone else's video, like, I'll analyze it. But when I'm the one presenting, or a 30-minute podcast on an interesting topic, like, I want to do the research. And the podcast is called the name just barely left me. Anyways, it's The Stories Were Told is the name of the podcast. And so the idea is, this is the story that we're told about X, right? So this is the story that we're told about meteors, or this is the story that we're told about the space program, or like different things like that. And I'll just go over the mainstream story, and because a lot of times I've noticed that people who are attacking flat earthers are like, well, you don't really even understand. Like, no, this is how it works. So it's like, no, let me show you. I understand the main story. This is the story that we're told, and this is why I'm not sold. So
I love that. That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
And I learned that in English, that's part of a good persuasive argument is any kind of persuasive essay is let them know that you're coming from their direction. Let them know that you've been in their shoes before. And then after that, you kind of explain your story as to why you left that. And
right. And
I love the title you got there. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I'm a psychology mind. I have a psychology degree. I have a certification in hypnotherapy, and I know that a lot in the alternative community, a lot of people are anti-hypnosis. Hypnosis is a tool, just like any other tool. It can be used for evil and it can be used for good. So using hypnosis for good. But the idea, and I was very, like, when I came up with it, I was like, that little tagline, like, the stories were told, I'm not sold. I was very aware that it could look like an incredulity fallacy, like, oh, I just don't believe it. But it's like, no, like, I understand it. It just doesn't have facts to back it up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I'm sure. So I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you something. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Hypnotherapy. I've looked into that myself, and when it comes to hypnosis, people think all kinds of spooky things about it. But anytime you watch a movie, there's elements of hypnotism in it. And so if a movie has ever made you cry, that's because that's hypnosis right there. It's making you feel for imaginary characters that aren't there. And so that's all.
Oh,
hypnosis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When you get on the edge of your seat, what's going to happen? That's all hypnosis, right?
Yeah. Our minds we have been built with the ability to we have an imagination, and we can see images in our mind. It's very, very powerful. And the media knows that. And so instead of you creating your own images, they'll say, well, here are the images. And so that's why when you sit in front of your TV and you snuggle down in the couch and kind of lay back, you are setting yourself up for just opening your mind to whatever they want to program you with. And because the images are right there and you don't have to create them on your own, it's easier to just let them show you the truth than for you to figure it out. So like knowing that, I watch television and movies very differently, if that makes sense. I just have the knowledge and the power instead of just being like, okay, tell me what the truth is. It's like I have to keep my filter on intentionally. And I mean, I stopped watching the news years ago, but anytime that, you're in, I mean, the mainstream media, all the movies, I went and saw the new Spider-Man with my nieces and nephews and everything, and they were all excited about it. And I mean, all I can think about is, oh, look at all the programming they're giving to the masses.
Yeah,
I don't watch it.
You see it,
and it's like,
you see it.
Yeah, it's really interesting the big things that I'm seeing in media right now, and I especially watch media intended for children. I think that's what they want to program. Like they're programming them for things that are coming 15, 20, 30 years down the road. And there's a lot of stuff in kids films with nanotechnology that is really big in the kids media right now. Portals, there's a lot with like other dimensions and portals, and I don't know what's true or not on all of that, but I know that they want that in the psyche. And there's a couple more. The other big one that I've seen recently is like artificial intelligence, robots and stuff as law enforcement. That's been surprising to see that in multiple different films. That floating robots or walking robots will come up and ask to see your papers or your identification, or they'll be the ones to stop the crime and take you away. And it's like, ooh, that's a slippery slope. I don't like that.
There's also a lot of the politics like all over, and just little kids shows. You see it, and it's crazy. It's amazing just how much of the veil gets taken from your eyes, and wow, I can see what they're doing here. And it's not just in movies, but it's also in books. You can you read it there. Just ordinary books, and they're trying to shape kind of how you vote in the future based off of these little hints or suggestions. I'm going to suggest that you do this now, and that way you've already kind of made a decision in the future because you've had all these little suggestions all along the way. So
right, and that's the term they use in hypnotherapy all the time, is suggestion. If you're suggestible, or like you're giving suggestions, because you're not able to go in and force someone to think a certain way, but you give the suggestion. And then if they're in the right state of mind, they'll accept the suggestion, and then it becomes true to them. Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the big things is in hypnotherapy, you're never controlling anyone. You're just giving them suggestions to do things. And there's some really neat things that happen with it. When it comes to, I've heard there's kind of a hypnotherapist out in St. George who works in the medical field, and you can get rid of allergies or something like that. Is that right? About like curing
there's
allergies?
There's a lot of overlap between physical ailments and your emotions. The subconscious mind, I now look at it differently than I used to. I see my body as my subconscious mind. We call it muscle memory for a reason. Our muscles actually have memory. You'll talk to massage therapists or physical therapists, and as people are getting massages, they will have memories come up, and they'll start to release, and they'll start to cry as their muscles are getting worked. So yes, we store memories in our brain, but we also store memories and experiences in our body. And so I'll use that technique like in sessions. If someone's not really able to make that breakthrough or have the memory come back to mind, like they're like, I know that, you know, this bad experience happened. I'll like have them move their body into what it naturally wants to do. Sometimes it might be like making themselves smaller or the fetal position, and then all of a sudden the memory will come back. And so like we have memories in our body, and that's what I consider the subconscious mind. And it's just really fascinating to work with that. But I've been dabbling in the idea of like marketing my hypnotherapy as like a flat earth tool, because I know that when you come to the flat earth awakening, it's very liberating in a lot of ways, but also it can be damaging to realize how many people are lying to you, or like the intentions of the elite, or like just having your entire foundation, you know, taken away from you can kind of feel lost in those moments. So I'm like, that would be really fun to work with people who are, you know, coming to this flat earth awakening, and then they could have a therapist who understands that. Because I've been in therapy sessions where I'm like, well, how do I even start to explain that I believe that the earth is flat? Because that's a foundational principle to me. For my therapist to understand me, they can't really. So I haven't necessarily marketed that, but it's something that I'd be open to doing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What do you think? What do you think about that? Do you think that would be a helpful thing for someone that's going through that awakening? Like if they're already looking for therapy, like to have someone who's on that same wavelength?
I think that'd be something. Just I'd market that you're really open and you're not judgmental towards anyone, and that's the key thing to market towards. I wouldn't be trying to.
Sure. Well, I'm not saying that I would market as a flat earth therapist to the non-flat earth community.
Yeah,
but
that'd be
within
kind
the
of weird
flat
for
earth
them.
community,
Yeah.
let them know, hey, like I can help with the feelings that you're going through as you go through this process. Both I've experienced it myself, and I've helped other people through that process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I took a business class while in college, and we talked about the book City of Influence, and it's a really short book, but we spent the entire semester just talking about it, and it was really just all about how building a business is just a matter of building relationships. And so when you build relationships with people, that's what people come back to all the time. And that's the foundation to any business, is the relationships that you build with people. And so what you're telling me right here, that's what makes me think of it, is you're getting onto their level and you're building that relationship with you. You're finding that common ground. And I think that right there is really powerful. If you can successfully do that and kind of come to their level and talk to them like that and find that common ground with them, that's important. It'll be good for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting book. I hadn't heard that title, but that's a very bite-sized takeaway that I like. The building a relationship is building a business. I like that.
Yeah. So I've noticed that you've been really good with that. I don't know, like, how exactly did you get so many people there at the Draper meet and greet? Did you just get on the app and just click everyone you could see, or how'd that go?
Yeah, well, so it started a year before. I was like, I just want to meet some other flat earthers.
Year?
No, I had done one other meetup 1 year prior, almost exactly to the day. And there wasn't the flat earth, sun, moon, and zodiac app that there is now with the friend finder. That was a great tool. So I just reached out to a few YouTubers, influencers, and just like Taboo Conspiracy. I mentioned it to Jeranism, Mark Sargent, and then there was an old app for flat earthers, like I don't know if it was a dating thing. So I think like 1 or 2 people came from that. Most of them came from Mark Sargent. And we had like 25 people at the event. And then I was like, oh, this was awesome. I want to do it monthly. But the problem was I hadn't like planned the next one out already. So all of a sudden it was the middle of the summer. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do another event. Maybe I'll make it at least twice a year. And then didn't set the event, so like all of a sudden it was almost a full year later. and I had someone contact me who's like, "Hey, are you going to do another meetup? Like, I can help you plan it." I was like, "Oh yeah." Like, just having someone to bounce the ideas off of was really
Yeah.
helpful. And so I
Uh-huh.
don't know if you met Belinda, who was there. She gave her little Flat Earth Awakening story at the very beginning.
Oh yeah, yeah, she was awesome. Yeah, so she was
Yeah,
helping
she's
you out a lot with that. That's cool.
yeah. So she kind of helped me organize it, and I was like, "Well, let's just do it at the same time." And then so I kind of already had that base of 25 people, and I was like, okay, maybe one or two can't make it, but I at least thought we'd have 20-25 people from before. And then I think a combination of like you had posted it and Taboo posted it again, Mark Sargent
Yeah,
posted
I
it
think I
again.
saw it from Taboo Conspiracy and yeah, a couple other people.
Yeah,
Or no,
and
actually, it
then
was you
because
contacted me
he's
through
from
the app.
Utah, you're
That's
from
how it
Utah.
happened.
And then the app, you choose a 50-mile radius, and so 50-kilometer radius, and so that only got so many of the people. So I had one person who was up further in Utah, like maybe 100 kilometers away, posted as well. So between us two, we got maybe 90% of the people in Utah. Then I just individually clicked and pasted the message to anybody else that was within a few-hour drive. After that, I was at like 50 or 60 people who were committed, and I'm like, just thinking personally, if I knew about a meetup that was in Las Vegas, that's only a 5-hour drive for me, I would at least want to know about it. So with that same mindset, then I went and individually text, or like on the Flat Earth app, Friend Finder, everybody that was in like Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, all those surrounding states for Utah, I just messaged them individually, and that probably got us another 20 or 30 people to come. So it
Yeah,
was
we
just
had someone
getting the
coming
word
all the
out.
way from Texas, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there was some people that flew from Seattle, from Texas, people who drove from Boise, and there was just people from all over the place. It was so cool.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you had a huge base there before everyone came over, before the app, which I think was really cool. I don't know how you got to know so many people. Was this just through Facebook that you got to know all these people before the app?
No, it was once again, I posted. It was for the first meetup in 2020, and people who came to that people who follow Mark
Where'd you
Sargent.
post it? Just on Mark Sargent's thing?
Yeah, Mark Sargent, and Taboo Conspiracy. I think those were where most of those
Oh,
people
okay.
came from. And
Oh,
so that's
okay.
where we got the base. And then I don't know if you noticed this, but probably about 85% of the people at the meetup were like Flat Earth, like they had been awakened, and then maybe 10 to 15% were like kind of looking into it or had been invited,
Oh,
didn't really know that much about it. And so I got some really good feedback afterwards, like to go over some basic Flat Earth info for those who were new, because like I hadn't considered that at all. And so most of the program that we did was a little bit more advanced, assuming that people had that basic knowledge. So we have what we're going to do going forward. We're going to test out doing a meetup every 2 months,
okay.
and one will be at the library, and then so that'll be in this coming Saturday, February 5th. And then 2 months after that, in April, we'll do a big gathering, once again inviting people from the surrounding areas, or even kind of like the Flattoberfest maybe is something that we can get the word out. Once you already know there's going to be 90, 100 people, then at that point, more flat earthers are willing to maybe travel and get to meet others and have that camaraderie, and people who are interested in dating, and that community. And I think if we did it like 3 of the big meetups a year, that's still far enough apart that we'll still get a good turnout.
Yeah.
Like you're driving from St. George, you might not want to drive up every single month,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
three times a year for a big gathering. And so we'll do those not at the library. At the library, we're very limited as far as like the capacity and
Yeah.
that. But I wanted to get your take on this. So at our meetup, I had the idea of making, like, I want it to be very scientific, and I know how your channel is approached and your videos, and going through textbooks and like wanting everything to be repeatable. I want our Utah Flat Earth meetups to contribute to the community.
That'd be awesome.
I want to divide into maybe 2 or 3 groups that people have a natural interest in already. So maybe one of them, for me, I'll probably head up like studies more on the mind, like flat Earth, like more of a psychological approach, and doing surveys and understanding people's mindsets. And then we have Robert from FE Core and Ben from Taboo and yourself. You guys are really good at like more of the physical sciences. And so to have maybe a group or 2 who are, okay, like this is our, like, let's get together, let's find an experiment that we're all excited about, let's record and repeat the process a few times, and then when we get together 2 months later, that can be a lot of what we present, whether it's a video or repeating the experiment for everybody to see. Like, I just want there to be progress, and like, instead of just like, I think that meet and mingle is good, but why not also try to become more educated, have better studies, more documented, more people involved. There's just a better energy. So that's kind of what I'm hoping that the bi-monthly meetings do, is a way that we can like meet together. We get in our groups, we decide what studies or experiments we want to focus on, and then we have 2 months to do that, and we come back, share our results, and that'll kind of be a launching pad for the next 2 months for what we to build on that.
Yeah. I've done like, I think 4. It's been 4 different meet and greets that I've been to so far. And you've been to one of them out in St. George here at the St. George Iceberg. And we've been doing that like on a month-to-month basis for, I guess, it's been since February. I'm not sure. November. Last November is when we first started. So it's still pretty new. Yeah. When we do that, though, it's always kind of like a limited time. It's not like super long. It's generally like about an hour or 2 that we're there. And most of the time, people just want to get to know each other. Wow, there's other people out there who have similar views as I do. And everyone's got really amazing stories. So I think that's kind of tends to be the focus for us, is just getting to know each other and then talking about our goals. Like, where do we want to go with this? And, any ideas? What major discoveries have you made? But I've noticed so far, just by my course of trying to get it out there, is I haven't had any like non-flat earthers really show up to any of those. Like, I've tried to invite them in different like community Facebook groups, but I haven't had any like trolls show up or anything like that. And so most of the time with these people who have been flat earthers for longer than I have, they kind of already know these kinds of things. And so that's kind of been the focus for me in that area. But I do like your idea about surveys. And so I was thinking in the future, what I want to do is I would love to go and do a booth over at the county fair. Go to Washington County Fair, do a booth. And that would be a place that I'd want to have a booklet full of different kinds of like info on it. And so kind of give people the introduction to flat earth and that they've never heard of before, you know what I mean? And so I think that's more of a setting for that. And if I were to go out and do surveys, that'd be another place, because doing a booth is like $400. It's really expensive to.
Oh, really? Yeah. So you have to have a way to get the return on investment at least. So yeah, that's tough.
So it's kind of crazy up there. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a booth this year or not. I did. I went to it last year, and I just went around and interviewed people. And last time it was on like a biblical approach, and it's like, okay, well, do you guys believe in the Bible? Yeah. Are you aware that the Bible teaches that the earth is flat? And they're like, what? It does? Yeah. And so I just show them a few passages in the Bible. And then after that, okay, well, have you ever heard of any evidence for the flat earth? And then I can point to my channel and other channels around on YouTube, and so
Yeah,
that was one approach for kind of a pickup line, I guess you could say. But yeah, that was one approach to kind of generate interest with new people.
yeah.
I think this year, though, I'm gonna I've got some other questions in mind where I'm not gonna focus it on starting from the Bible. I was just gonna find out, do a basic survey, finding out, well, how much do you guys trust your government? Do you guys believe that 9/11 actually happened? Do you believe that the moon landings actually happened? And then building from there, and then say, okay, so 9/11 moon landing, and so if those two check out, then I can bring up, well, what do you think about the flat Earth? Have you ever heard of any evidence? And so if I think that's a good way to kind of get things started. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but when I see different studies like that, like I know that I can't remember the organization off the top of my head, but they like made phone calls and took surveys to it was astounding. I think that the way they worded the question is not like have doubts that the Earth is round. I can't remember exactly how they worded it, but for the millennial group, it was like in the 60% of people don't necessarily believe in the moon landings, and it was close to 30 or 40% that are not sure if the Earth is round. And it's like, can I trust that? Like, I want to repeat some of those surveys, and once again, if it's scientific, or the bigger sample size you have, the bigger the group, the more accurate the number is likely to be. So to see if, number one, that's accurate at all, because that seems so high to me, that a third of millennials are not sure if the Earth is round. Like, that's absurd.
Yeah. So I think another great place to do it would be college campuses. Is go interview just random people at college campuses.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If I want to know that demographic, go to where those people are most likely to be. And if I want to get a sample size, that's more broad, go elsewhere. But so those are some of the things that I would love to do. I also need to give you credit. The name of our group in Utah is the Geocentric Earth Science Group. And because you're going through the Earth Science book, and I do want there to be a scientific approach, and instead of being like flat Earth meetup, that's fine. But we're doing science. You don't have to have a lab coat and a degree to do science. That's almost what causes science to not progress in some way.
You have to be a professional in order to make any kind of scientific claim. That's kind of the way they kind of squash the little people out down.
And it's like you learn about the scientific method, and in nowhere have I seen in that scientific method the peer review process. That's not in the scientific method, but that's in the scientific culture. And it allows for it causes us to be so we just don't progress, because anything that's out of the paradigm gets immediately dismissed regardless of how much evidence it has. It's just it's archaic. And so we are doing science and doing studies, and we're doing laser experiments, and geocentric, for those who have a brain, they might be able to figure it out. But that way it's I want it to sound credible, and I like that the name of your channel and everything, it's the Flat Earth Science or Institute of Science, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So
it's the program. It's not the name of my channel. The name of my channel is just Kyle Adams.
Yeah.
But I have it's a playlist. The name of the playlist and the series that I'm doing. It's what I call the curriculum. So
curriculum, the Flat Earth Institute of Science. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. You don't have to be a professional in order to do science, as you said. I just think about even babies who don't even know how to talk, know how to do science, because science is just making observations of the world around them. It's just so even babies, they learn cause and reaction if I cry, mom's going to come over here and feed me. You know what I mean? And so they're all about testing the world around them. And so you don't need to be a professional, who's doing all these things for profit or anything like that. It's just something that people are born with. They know how to do these things, and they're born brain dead.
It drives me bonkers when I see someone they'll post an unprofessional video of their scientific experiment, and then people will just thrash them and say, you didn't account for all the variables, you didn't isolate the variable, you don't know what the hell you're doing, and they just get so nasty. And it's they might not have done it perfectly, but that's a foundation and they need to learn somehow. So instead of attacking people who were trying to figure out and do experiments, you didn't isolate that variable, so we can't completely take those results and trust them completely. But what it does give you is, how can I isolate the variable better next time? How can I make it a better experiment? And then how can I get more consistent results? And then we're moving forward. So when I see different experiments that are not well done, I applaud them and I say, obviously you might not have known that you should only be testing for one variable at a time. If you're testing for two variables at a time, then you don't know which variable it is. So as much as you can isolate the variable, that's great. But it doesn't need to be, there's just an online culture of, especially if anyone's coming from the flat earth angle, is you're already stupid, and then your experiment wasn't perfect, so you're stupid, so all of flat earth is stupid. It's I don't like that.
Yeah, I kind of have to laugh though at the people who say, "Oh, well, where's your peer review?" I'm like, I'm posting it on YouTube for the public to see and comment on, And so this is peer review,
right? Oh my gosh!
If I was hiding this in my basement and I didn't show it to anyone, then you could say that has no peer review. But the fact that I'm making this public and I'm sharing my views and sharing my discoveries, that's opening it to peer review. I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be in a journal where only a select few people can talk about it. That's not how it works.
Right, that stays within that paradigm of the peer review, the official peer review process. Which, I think that it might have some benefits, but I think that the cons far outweigh the benefits that you get from that, as far as that being the go-to culture for the universities and such. But yeah, and there's just I was at the aquarium, the Salt Lake, or there's a big aquarium in Draper. By Salt Lake. Yeah, and I was in that one, and there's a tunnel that you walk under where the sharks and the sea turtles and stingrays and stuff, they're all flying above you and around you. And then you can go from another angle and look at that tunnel, and it just got my mind thinking about potential, there's an idea, there's a theory that there's waters above and waters below, a biblical theory. And I think that there's some evidence to that, but it was just so interesting to be in this, underneath this dome, and seeing how displaced all of the objects were. The shark wasn't really where I thought it was. And the other window wasn't where I thought it was. And then you go from the other angle and it's oh yeah, it's very different. But at that angle, you're also not seeing it where things really are. And so it's there's so much we can test. And I really think that the flat earth movement could potentially give some real breakthroughs to modern physics.
Absolutely.
Repeatable, when we did our laser test after the last Utah Flat Earth meetup, everybody's oh yeah, so was it successful? Were you able to see the other one? It's no, I've done other laser experiments where we were successful and that one wasn't. There were light conditions, and the laser, we couldn't get it to focus over the 13 miles by the time it had hit that distance. Whatever weather conditions were there, it was causing the laser to kind of shoot upwards, and the beam was diffracting, so it wasn't just so narrow still, it was much wider, and there was just some interesting conditions. But it wasn't I didn't need it to be successful. That's not my point. I'm not necessarily like, I've had people say like, okay, like what would it take for you to get back to knowing that the earth wasn't flat? And I'm like, well, first of all, I would have to unsee a lot of what I've seen from NASA's blooper, and that's fine. They could be faking it for whatever reason and it still be true. But I'm much more skeptical that it is true. So I guess I don't care if the earth is flat or not. I want to learn. And the way that I learn best is being skeptical. Mm-hmm. When I was a really good student, I was so good at regurgitating whatever the professor told me, even in college. Like I would put on my essays and my tests and all of that. Like I would just essentially go verbatim what the professors would say. And it hits their pride spot. And they're like, oh, he's listening. He totally understands this. And I would get great grades because I knew how to regurgitate. But that didn't help me learn. That helped me get good grades. And what I'm interested in now is I'm interested in learning. And so even if it's something I already believe in, when I come at it from a skeptical point of view, not like always being devil's advocate or like being controversial, but just saying, okay, what part of that is true and what part of that isn't true? Then all of a sudden my mind opens up and I can learn so much deeper and get real understanding instead of just these surface answers that all the, like globe trolls will love. Like I can't tell you how many videos I've watched of how we know the earth is round, and they give the same 6 answers that are easily debunkable through science.
Yeah.
It's just like,
they kind of like shrug us off and they just kind of write us off and don't, it's not okay to think this. And they don't give any real strong arguments. It's just very, very shallow. And just like, really, you are supposed to be the professional, the elite, the guy who knows it all. And yet you're giving the worst answers ever. Come on. I expect I expect more than this. And I expect it to be treated a little bit more seriously. And so, that kind of was a big eye-opener for me right there. It's just kind of watching their responses to how these things go.
Another thing, so like I told the story earlier of my brother-in-law, he got upset when it was like talking to his kids about flat earth. And the same thing, if you're familiar with the story of Behind the Curve, the reason that they changed their narrative in the story was they went to the flat earth. There was a flat earth meetup, and like a 12-year-old was asking a question to Mark Sargent, I believe. And they're like, whoa, like this is affecting kids. So like on their side, I've noticed that like, that's when they're like, okay, let adults think whatever they want, but we have to protect the kids. And on the same token, like I'm going to start feeling that way more. Like, my son is in preschool right now, and he came home and he's like, Dad, I learned this cool song. Can we look it up on YouTube? And it's like learning about the solar system and all the planets and what they're made of and how long it takes them to revolve around the sun and this and that. And it's like, hey, like, I'm okay with you teaching this as a theory. I don't mind about that. I actually love playing with my son. I love playing space. And it's very clear that this is imagination land. We can go to Narnia if we want. We can go back in time. We can go to space. These are all imagination lands, and there's nothing wrong with that. But just don't tell them that it's true. If that makes sense. Like present that as a potential theory that we can learn about instead of indoctrinating them to say this is exactly the world that you live in and we figured it all out.
Yeah,
like I'm starting to get more protective.
Yeah, that was one thing my kids kind of came up as to me and asked, okay, why do you like Star Wars if it's all about planets out in space and, globe worlds and things? I'm like, well, it's imaginary. And it's okay to enjoy science fiction. Is what it is. It's the problem is when people take those things and then they say it's real, and that's when there's a bit more of an issue here. So Star Wars is we're totally imaginary, and that's okay. And so I don't have any issues with that.
Yeah, you can go there. You can go to that world, and you can imagine that and have a great time. But as long as you understand it's imaginary. Then and it's really like, I don't know. Have you watched any of like the James Webb Telescope stuff? That in the last month that's been a big thing with NASA.
I don't think so.
So essentially, they have this new telescope, the James Webb Telescope, it was supposed to be launched like back in 2012, and it was supposed to cost like $500 million, and it was delayed 10 years, and the total budget was over 11 billion, and it's supposed to be like the new and improved Hubble telescope. And I watched, it was like on Christmas Day they launched it, and I watch those things now, and it's like, it literally feels like I'm putting on a comedy. Like, now that you're trained to see specific things, they just have like the same, it's like the same program, the same script they do for all their launches, and they have the same things, and it's like, oh, I'm like, NASA is just driving me bonkers. Like, they'll say that they know what a planet is made of that is, 80 trillion miles away, because as there was a telescope that was looking, then there was a very light blip in the amount of light that was received, which means there was a planet passing in front of that sun. And then as they get their spectrometer on it, they can tell what is in the atmosphere of these planets, so they can see if they're Earth-like, and they have methane, and they have oxygen, they have... I'm like, it just is so funny how absurd that is.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let's try to... So this was like one of the experiments that I had in my mind. I haven't done it yet, but like, let me get different elements in different jars and put it 300 meters away, and you tell me accurately what is inside of that jar. You can't see it, you're just using your spectrometer, and I'm sure they'll have some reason why they can't, or maybe they can, and maybe it's accurate, in which case I might trust it a little bit more. But it's kind of like the whole, I don't know, like dating rocks, for example. Like, it's known to be inaccurate if we know the age of the rock, but it's assumed to be accurate if we don't know the age of the rock. Like, that is just stupid. And the same thing with the spectrometer. It's like, okay, so maybe I'm just uninformed, but if they can accurately identify elements from 5 miles away or 10 miles away or 300 meters away, then I'm a little bit more likely to think that they could do it from 25 or 80 trillion miles away. Like, I still don't think they can, but they'd have a little bit more proof. But I haven't seen them accurately do that. Like, I want to see those studies. So I'm like, how do we get a spectrometer?
No, they don't post that stuff. It's all private information. And so that's exactly what I was talking about.
And we understand it, and we have the scientists, so just believe us. It's like, no, I want to see if you can really do that.
Yeah, I was totally talking about that in the textbook I was reading.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, as I said, I was totally doing that in the textbook thing. Oh yeah, well, we can know what a star is made out of using the spectrometer. So okay, well, let's see it. Where do I find anything that talks about how that's done? And they don't say it. It's just, this is the claim, and we're the experts, therefore you should trust us. And
it's just, I get a hot air balloon. I go up in the air. I'm at 20,000 feet, and I have helium in one and hydrogen in another container, and however it needs to be, so that they can accurately shoot their spectrometer up even just 20,000 feet. What is that, 4 or 5 miles? And can you accurately tell what I have from that distance? Like, that's scientific, not just...
I think about the layering too, because it's not just boom, there's helium from 2 billion light years away or anything like that, but all of a sudden there's always okay, well, what about all the gas in front of that? And what about all the gas in front of that? Do you really think there's nothing for 2 billion miles until boom, there's helium,
So, yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. So oh my gosh, all the particles in the way, but it's like, well, in that case, then it being the space being such a strong vacuum, it's like, well, there's nothing in the way because it's such a strong vacuum. All the particles have dispersed, and it's like, well, you can't have that. You can't have both ways. If it's such a strong vacuum, then you can't have planets forming, and you can't have gas giants if it's such a strong vacuum. But it's such a strong vacuum that there's nothing in the way. And then the other argument they use a lot of the times is, no, we have to have the Hubble telescope or this new James Webb telescope looking, because it's not looking through the atmosphere. And then that becomes, well, nobody else can repeat it. So all of that information, not that it's 100% void, but it is 100% void unless they can accurately prove with really good camera footage and like undisputable evidence that this is really happening, and not just sending data back and whatever is received at the computer on this end. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to prove that sort of thing, and so I'm not just going to take it on blind faith.
Yeah, it's kind of another one of those things is if you can see something that's 2 billion light years away, if we did go to the moon, shouldn't we be able to see the footprints on the moon? That's just one of those kind of head scratchers. It's like, come on, guys, really?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and they always kind of. There's always more to the story, and they always say, "Oh, well, it's not a perfect vacuum. The Earth's atmosphere all the way actually extends all the way out to the moon," and that's a NASA claim. They claim that the Earth's atmosphere is on the moon. I was like, "Oh, really? That's interesting." And then there's, all of the solar wind is constantly spewing out gas, and so it's all over the place, and that's what's giving a comet its tail. And okay, so that should be a filter between our telescope and those stars forever,
that's
far
a really
away.
good point.
Yeah, that's all going to be in there. And so, but it's so thin. I'm like, yeah, I understand it's really thin, but when you take a little bit of something and spread it out really far and look through it, all of a sudden now it becomes really thick. It appears to be really thick because you're
similar to the atmosphere when you're looking across like over. Yeah. The space would have that same thing. If you're looking through comet dust and you have the meteor belt and all these types of things, if you're looking 25 trillion miles to the nearest star, it's going to get thicker and thicker and thicker and obscure that. And the fact that we're getting light, and that's the closest star. So for the further stars that are, and it's this claim that they're going to look back in time is really interesting. It's very religious, very like when I was an LDS Mormon missionary, like we would go out and we would tell people where we came from and why we're here and where we're going. And NASA is trying, like, it's very, very religious. They're trying to say,
very similar.
This is where we came from. This is what happened to us. And so this is where we are. And then they're honestly trying to predict the future and say that there's going to be aliens. Like, that's a huge narrative right now. Everything's about, like, all of the reason we're doing this is to find other Earth-like atmospheres that, where intelligent life could have formed, and trying to, like, give us our sense of purpose and being by looking into the past. And it's like, you can't look into the past. You can't tell me that, like, because that happened, that light traveled that far away, that you're looking into the past. That I used to buy that and be like, whoa, yeah, like we are looking into the past. And now it's like, as you're saying, like, if you're looking 100 trillion miles away and there could be particles and comet trails and this that you're looking through, like, you're not going to accurately see what's there anyways. There's more and more discrepancies the more that you look at it. Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things is, I keep seeing all of the different programming all throughout TV, just a random globe here, a random globe there, and there's all this alien stuff that they're constantly pushing on people.
Constantly,
constantly pushing on
the
people.
The History Channel of all things, like, pushes aliens almost more than anything else.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I was just thinking about how way back when I was in high school, I graduated in like 2006. And so way back then, before I'd ever heard of any of this flat earth stuff, I had a friend who came up to me and was like, the whole reason, like, the government's actually trying to push that, and the media is trying to push aliens so they could come out and do some kind of alien contact with people, and then the world wouldn't totally freak out. And that was his whole claim, because my friend was all into aliens at the time. They're gonna reveal it, make it public, but before they can make it public, they have to condition the audience so they don't freak out. And then after Flat Earth, I learned all about Bluebeam, Operation Bluebeam, which was where they're going to do the fake alien landing and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense with what I've heard in the past. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's just such a strong narrative right now. There's a reason why. And on New Year's Eve, I was chatting with some friends, and they're like, okay, what are your predictions for 2022? And I was like, well, I don't necessarily think 2022, but I do think that in the next 5 years there's going to be some sort of fake alien invasion. There, the technologies are advanced enough. There might just be, perfecting it, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's something that is going to come along. And in the back of my mind, I always felt like with Flat Earth, I'm just kind of learning and I'm new to this world and there's so much information and there's so many trolls. Like kudos to you for being vocal about it. And I'm getting to that point where I'm brave enough to, and taking all the trolls and, even just with my meetup, I had a couple trolls, tell me how stupid I was and this and that. And it's just, I know that for the most part, they're paid agents and sometimes they're just religious zealots of the NASA philosophy. But I was going to make a point with when I was talking about the aliens.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come back to me. But it's just interesting to see that that's such a strong part of the narrative right now. And I was going to say, that's when I always thought, okay, I'll be more vocal about stuff when the alien stuff hits, because I'm so certain that is an agenda.
Yeah.
Here was the point I was going to make. This is just as I've been analyzing the elite, the New World Order. In my mind, I think that the New World Order has been in power since 1945. World War II.
It's already here. It's not something that's going to happen. It's already here.
Yeah. And so it is here in so many different ways. Like, from what I've researched, some of their agenda is to have a one world government, a one world currency, one world language, one world religion, all this type of stuff. And it's if you've ever seen Independence Day, one of the lines, I won't quote it verbatim, but it's what is going to bring the world together more than getting attacked from anybody outside of this world? It's going to bring the world together. So in structure, the New World Order has been here. There, the Antarctic Treaty, all the wars, or there's just so much fake going on. And then you look at the space agencies, European Space Agency, JAXA, RASA, NASA. All of them are teaching the same thing, and they're all putting out when you look. That's one of the things that makes NASA actually look good. They look so bad, but when you compare them to some of the other space agencies, they actually do look good, because the other ones are putting out so much garbage. But we don't see that propaganda because we're not in those countries. But I think that the alien invasion is a way for them to bring that all together. They've been setting all the pieces. They are in power, but they can't let us know they're in power. And maybe they prefer that. They usually like to be the puppeteers behind the scenes. And so I don't know that they ever want to be in power. But if they did choose that, that's, I think, the mode of choice they would use is the fake alien invasion.
Yeah. You mentioned Independence Day, and I was thinking Ender's Game. They do that too. It was the big alien invasion in Ender's Game that brought the world together and created the hegemony and all these things.
It's definitely in the psyche.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, there for sure is a war of words and information going on out there. I just learned recently that ODT TV's his channel got nuked. It's gone. It's terminated.
No.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Bad. He was even mostly he wasn't. Last I heard, he was considered in the music genre. So I'm surprised that
his music channel's still there. Yeah, it's just his music channel now. Yeah. But his main thing it just got nuked. It's been terminated. So because he had music albums, his albums are still, when you look up, all you see is just different albums. They didn't nuke that. So
yeah. Kyle, have you read 1984?
No.
It's most people are familiar with it, at least in theory. It's a book about the government having all control, and they burn all books, and they're the all-knowing source of all information, that sort of thing.
Reminds me of Fahrenheit 51 or something.
Fahrenheit 451, that's another one that's similar to this. So I read 1984 within the last year, and the main character, his job, he works at the government, and anytime that the government in the book says something that contradicts what they said in the past, they gather any book, magazine, any piece of information that has the old information, and they burn it. And then they reprint it all so that everything matches what the government is saying, so they can say, look, we never said anything wrong. Right? And so he does that for his job, so he knows that the government says things wrong all the time. But it's hard to prove it because you can never go back and do that. And like there's TVs in every single room everywhere, and they're constantly monitored, and they're required to watch the TV, and the TV's monitoring their heart rate and all this other information, and it can spy on them essentially. But what kind of dawned on me after I read the book, I'm like, we're not in that society, and they don't want us to be. If we were to that level of being controlled, that's when rebellions happen. Like, if you know you're being controlled, people start to push back. But the way that they censor the information for us is they don't say that, we never said anything wrong. But what they do is they say, well, we're only going to give you information that we want you to see. And so with these mega corporations, the Google, YouTube, when you're getting your information from those sources, we've seen it happen in the last 5 years, the level of control that, like, and to back up just a little bit, I used to think that, like, history was accurate, back in the early 1900s and 1800s in the newspapers. But it's like, I don't necessarily think that's the case anymore. I think that they were being controlled back then, and whatever narrative was being pushed. And then this new media came along, social media, and people could post whatever they wanted, and all this different misinformation was coming along. And so now the government is saying, no, we're going to decide what's true, and anything that comes against that, we're going to censor, and we're not going to let anybody see it. And so instead of needing to go back and, like, burn what they've said that was wrong in the past like they did in the book, they're just censoring any information that comes out forward, and they can just push and push and push the same story that they want until we forget they ever said anything different.
That's a really good point that you're bringing up here, because it made me think back to I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube court hearing where YouTube comes out and acknowledges that about the censorship.
Yes. Yeah, especially for you, it was
YouTube didn't specifically say, I want to censor the flat Earth community. Okay, that's not the approach. They that was kind of a response and saying, okay, well, we got to do something. Why do they have to do something? Because the government was stepping in there. It was a court hearing. What are you guys doing to do something about this? And so they're telling them, you guys need to do something about this. And so they're, someone's putting pressure on them. And, I never really quite noticed that before, because all we were focused on in that video is YouTube. YouTube are censoring us. Okay, why are they censoring us is the question I never asked before. Why are they censoring us? Who's making them? And it's thinking back to it now, it's because the government is stepping in there and putting pressure on them.
Yeah, and it's crazy to see that, like, YouTube used to feed flat Earth videos all day long, and like I said, like, some of them were crappy and some of them were gold. But now, like, you can't watch a second video. Like, if you have to specifically search for it, and sometimes it's even hard to find. And then always the next video is, Neil deGrasse Tyson or Miku I don't know how to say his name. Miku
Kaku.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, sometimes I'll, like, fall asleep while I'm watching a video, and then because I am aware of my mind doing hypnotherapy, I'll, like, be half asleep, 3/4 asleep, and I'll hear all this, like, astrophysics propaganda being thrown at me while I'm not quite asleep. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta, like, come back to and turn that off because I don't want that going while my mind can be picking it up.
Yeah, I understand. But it's interesting, kind of the predictive videos. What follows after this video? kind of a thing that you're talking about, and it just automatically just kind of switches over and says, okay, well, you're interested in that, so I'm going to give you Neil Tyson. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So some people might ask, what's the deal with Neil Tyson? Why are you always quoting him? Why are you doing that? Well, it's because YouTube keeps bringing him up. He's the go-to guy for them, and so I'm going to point at a lot of his claims right there.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess we've kind of been addressing a whole bunch of it, but I was going to say, what are some of the major hopes and dreams for Flat Earth? What do you think how do you think that's going to benefit the world in the future? And so I think we've already been discussing. We've been hitting that one quite a bit, kind of here and there, but kind of indirectly, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Hopes and dreams for like the community and how it can make the world a better place.
Yeah, like what do you think the Flat Earth movement has to offer to the world? I was talking about this with my kids just recently. Why is Flat Earth important? What's the big deal? Because I was on my way to the last meet and greet out in St. George. I was trying to express to them about how this is a big deal. This is important, and they just didn't quite grasp why. What's the big deal? Yeah. Who cares about the shape of the Earth? Why is that important?
Yeah, I guess it would come down to why, if the Earth is flat and certain people know that, people in power, why would they make such a ginormous effort for us to know? Because if it's flat, there is a huge amount of effort, energy, money, time, everything going into teaching us the exact opposite and mocking and laughing at the idea of it being flat. And if there's that much effort from people in power to not let us have the information, it's important, extremely important to them. And why I think it's important to them is that if they can keep us from knowing where we are, they can kind of flex their muscles on how much control they have over us.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And in that sense, it's modern day slavery. And I don't say that lightheartedly. That I can't tell you how many people I know who don't really like their life. They wake up when they don't want to, go to a job they don't enjoy, and then because they don't enjoy that job, they want to have these luxuries to come home to when they're not working. But the luxuries that they're getting are anything that the TV tell them to get. If that makes sense. So then they buy more expensive toys. They get their boats and they go on vacations and they have to have their fancy cars. And then they're even more of a slave. And so they have no time to even think about what they're doing with their life. They just live it. And they're in what way are they able to rebel or break out of the system that they're in? They really have no chance. And so that's why I feel like it's a really big deal. The more people that find out about it, the more free that we become. I can't tell you how much I enjoy just going outside and being in awe. Just standing on the top of a hill and looking out, I can be there for a couple hours, and it doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee that brings me more happiness than someone who just bought their brand new Audi or whatever. And and there's nothing wrong with having that. But if you don't like your life, you have options. You don't have to. I decided to live in an RV full time for 3 or 4 months ago. I was looking at the cost of houses and renting, and for what I would pay in essentially 1 year's rent, I could buy an RV, a nice RV for that same price, and just live simply. And it's small, and it fits all of my needs. And I don't go and acquire stuff because I don't have anywhere to put stuff, and that stuff's not ultimately going to make me happier. So I have more time for relationships. I have more time for studying and researching. I have more time to get in touch with myself. I have more time to spend in nature. And I feel like my quality of life, like even though I just went through a divorce within the last few months and like things are hard, I'm like surprised at how well I'm doing. And I feel like a big part of that is that I'm breaking out of the system. I'm not all the way out yet. I've still got indoctrination and I've still got beliefs that I feel are not true to who I am, but I feel happy. And in a time when I'm going through a lot, like there's been changes in my family, there's been changes religiously with my foundation, there's been like a lot of what psychologists would consider like extremely stress-inducing events, and instead of feeling totally stressed out, I just kind of feel like I'm in control. So I think that's why like that's what I've seen personally. As far as like on a grand scale, what the flat Earth can do, I don't feel it's necessarily realistic at this time, but it doesn't take that big of a rebellion to scare the pants off of the people who are in charge.
Yeah.
Like some people think that everybody has to get on board. In Utah, there's like 3 million people here, and just on the Flat Earth app, there's like several hundred flat earthers, and that's only maybe 10% of people who have the app. And I know several flat earthers that don't even have the app. So this is, I wish I could have more accurate numbers, but out of 3 million people, my guess would be that there are several thousand flat earthers in the state who are active, like that's important to them. And if you have a number of elite, I guess they still kind of control the military, but not, and I'm not talking about a rebellion for real right now or anything like, but it's like that starts to get their attention, and then they try to suppress the information even more. And I deal with emotions and people's emotions when I do hypnotherapy. And when you try to squash something down, it shoots up even more in other ways. And I would love for that to happen. When they're censoring on YouTube and Facebook as much as they can, that just means more grassroots movement, which means more progress. And then all of a sudden, if you
can't talk in social media, we're going to find other ways to come up and do in-person meetups. And that's when we're going to see a lot more protests at the Capitol building or something like that.
You have 10,000 people who are active and they care about it and it's important to them. Holy shit, they are going to be trying to do anything they can to suppress us even more, which makes us grow even more. Because you can't hide the truth forever. And they did a good job. They did well enough. They have enough control over the media that, the baby boomer generation, they fell hook, line, and sinker for the moon landings and all of NASA, and their PR team's so good. But they've been discovered, and for whatever reason now the truth is coming out. I honestly think that the internet was the reason for that, because if you thought the Earth was flat in the past, and even if you were a person of influence that thought it was flat, how easily they would discredit your name and not let any information get out there. And then all of a sudden there's these communities, and it's, hey, like, you're actually kind of making sense, and let me go test it myself, and oh, my results are the same as your results. And so this community has just come out of nowhere, and I don't think it's going to be stopped.
Yeah. It reminds me of Storm Area 51, when 3 million people decided that they're all going to go meet up. And go storm Area 51. And the state of Nevada actually called it a national emergency, and so they had the Army and the National Guard get called out to that. And, I actually went to that. It was really fun, and I wasn't going there to break the law or anything like that. I just wanted to go there because I'm all about government transparency. And when the government all got freaked out, I was like, yeah, I totally want to go to that just so I can watch history in the making. And so I think that's kind of something the Flat Earth has to do. It's a big major call for government transparency. It's as I was thinking about it, it's when you say you can say I don't trust the government, okay, but when you say I'm a flat earther, that's saying I don't trust the government by this much. It's kind of quantifying just how much you distrust the government. So, yeah.
When we were first planning the meetup that we had in December, we wanted to set our intentions, and we had another guy who was helping us organize in the beginning, and the three of us kind of posed okay, do we want this to be a flat earth meetup, or open-minded people meetup, or what is our intention? And what I really liked, and the reason that I decided to keep it as a flat earth specific meetup, is because I really think that's a great level of being filtered. If that makes sense. There's more truth than just a flat earth. There's a lot of other stuff that you can look into. And there's a lot of people who don't trust the government, and they don't trust, maybe they don't trust the vaccine, or maybe they don't trust just the politicians or whatever. So there's a level of distrust. I don't know a single person who doesn't have a level of distrust toward the government, and for a good reason. There, but I really like that that's the level of filter that we chose, because if you can not trust the government to the level of believing the earth is flat, then you're going to find a lot of other common ground with people. And it's not that we just want to all be the same and agree on everything. It's we want to discover more truth and talk to other like-minded people, both for that sense of community and the sense of progress and growth that comes from it.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of things that just within the flat earth community, we have a lot of it's not all common ground. There's a lot of disagreements, but that's not really the focus of it. We're just really happy to find other people who believe that the earth is flat. That's kind of the exciting thing about it all.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it's kind of overlooking all of those little discrepancies and just celebrating the fact of, wow, I'm not alone. And so, it's exciting stuff.
Kyle, you're familiar with the Go Fast rocket?
Fast rocket. It rings a bell. I don't remember off the top of my head.
So I believe it was an amateur rocket that went up, and it was the one that you can hear it at 70,000 feet enter into another medium, and the spin slows down, and you can see the moon.
Oh yeah. I remember seeing that the footage of that. I didn't know that was what it was called, but yeah, you could see it kind of spinning.
It was spinning really fast. It got up to 70,000.
All of a sudden, it stops,
and you hear the plunk kind of. I think I don't know if that's been repeated anywhere else. So I started wondering if there's a way that we can replicate that type, because that doesn't seem like we need a NASA budget, but we're starting to explore up higher. And if that can be repeated, I feel that's huge. Does that make sense? If there's another medium up there, and that's just is super fascinating to me. And so that's one of those experiments that I don't know what kind of budget we would have, but something that I hope that as we come together and continue to progress, the same way that I'm skeptical if I see something one time. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen anything like that except for that one video. So I'm has that been doctored or edited? And if not, why are we not repeating that study? Because we can put cameras onto that kind of rocket. That's probably in the budget of a few thousand instead of a few billion. You know what I mean? So I'm that would be something that I would be really fascinated to either help with or help other people accomplish, so that we can repeat that type of study.
I'd be curious about kind of finding a way to capture some of that matter that stopped it. You know what I mean? If we could somehow
if
catch
we can
the parachute or something like
that,
suck it up and okay, this is when it happened, and so I'm going to suck it up and bring it back down here, and then we can study whatever that stuff is.
Yeah, first we would need to repeat the study and see if it's accurate, and then find a way to retrieve the substance. Yeah, exactly.
That'd be way cool.
I used to see back in 2016, there were like all these videos of like evidence of the dome, and there were like this glass was found in the deserts of Nigeria, and like is it pieces of the dome that have fallen off, and like different things like that. And I'm like, I haven't seen anything like that recently, like but I wonder if the only thing that I've heard of recently was what, like, I might have mentioned this to you, but like the sky ice in like I've heard stories of in Antarctica that they like essentially have an ice that it could be the dome, but it's so cold it's almost like it's just like frozen oxygen more than anything else.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so like these are things that we could maybe conceivably start to get progress on and some real evidence.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the fun part about doing these kind of meetups is you find a bunch of other people who are willing to go out and do experiments that are totally, I guess, outside the normal curriculum that you see at schools. This is, as I learned in college, I had one professor who told me, don't ever let don't ever let school get in the way of your education. That was what he told me. Don't let school get in the way of your education. And I like that kind of perspective. It's a really good
that's
perspective.
what we're doing. I feel like I've learned so much since like, opening my mind to potentially the earth could be flat and just looking skeptically. And it's like, even some of your studies, like, that you went and did the wind tunnel at that unnamed university. And like we start to see evidence of these different things and like understand the world around us. And I think that can only create progress. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And coming from when you just accept everything you've been told and feel like everything in the universe has already been figured out by modern day scientists, your desire to explore and grow and learn really gets squashed. And your level of happiness, I don't know how many, there's lots of different reasons for depression. And one of the big ones, in my opinion, and based on the science, is your mindset.
Yeah.
And if your mindset, if the structure in the society around you is telling you you can't do anything new, it's all been done, you just go do your little desk job, like that's very demeaning, especially to like the male exploratory soul.
Yeah.
Like we're built to explore and grow and learn.
Yeah. When it came to going to college, I guess you could say it's kind of like you're going out there hiking, but you've got to stay on the trail. And then all of a sudden you get into flat earth, and now you're going off the trail. You can hike wherever you want to go. You see a mountain, you go climb it. You don't have to worry about sticking to a certain trail. You can go wherever you want to. And that's really part of the fun, adventurous part of all this. I love it. So it's bringing out our adventurous spirit of not just being put in our place and this is what we were told to do, so we do it. It's giving us permission to go and challenge the status quo and make the world a better place. Learn more, grow more, educate more. Yeah, everything. Educational freedom, like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. Cool. So I think that kind of like wraps up, I guess, the majority of the questions I can think of here. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, we've kind of covered the gamut. Some stuff dealing with flat Earth, a lot of stuff that deals on other fringe topics, but no, like you're a joy to talk to. Feel like
you're really fun to talk to. Yeah,
like very intellectually stimulating. And sometimes it's good to have someone else to bounce those ideas off of, because I'll like think a lot of stuff, but then hearing your perspective and actually giving my perspective a voice solidifies a lot of it. So others who are in the Flat Earth community, I would encourage you not to just watch videos, but let it be a part of your life by going to meetups, getting the Flat Earth app, or doing whatever you need to. You don't have to do the Flat Earth app, but finding other people and having more conversations, which is going to spark more ideas, which is going to give us more videos and more scientific experiments and more education and better arguments. And whether or not that convinces other people, I don't really care that much. I hope that it does. And I just hope that we all, can come to, and the truth is different for everybody. However, our physical world around us, and I'll quote Neil deGrasse Tyson in a good way, but it's true whether or not you believe it. Yeah. But I do want to come to a knowledge of the truth. I don't want to come to a knowledge of your indoctrination. And so I do think that there are principles that are true, and we want to really have a good foot to stand on. And so, yeah, the more that you meet up with other like-minded people and have these conversations, it, number one, like shows you where you have gaps in your knowledge, and you can solidify that, and shows us where we can grow and where we can put our efforts to have better arguments and better studies and just come to understand the world around us.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm really trying to do is go out and collect information on who the different area leaders are. And I've got you here, which is, I'm calling them area captains, area captain for the Salt Lake area. And you hold the ones for all of Utah in general. When we do that one, like that was what we did before in December. That's when we had the 100 people show up. That was all of Utah. So I've just barely got contact information for the area captain of Las Vegas, and I'm still out there, trying to get other ones. And so I can have my own little directory. I think that'd be really nice. And so if anyone is passing by, I can kind of give them contact information and say, okay, well, I know this area does a monthly meet and greet, and this area does like a yearly meet and greet, and kind of have an idea of what's going on in the world. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and especially like the way that you have your flat Earth news and updates and that sort of thing, that makes sense that you would have that, to compile that. So if I get any more information on other area coordinators or area captains, I'll pass it along.
Okay, let me know. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. That was it was a joy to talk to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll call it, and I'll be good here.
Okay, one other idea that I had.
Oh yeah.
We don't have to do live. Yeah, I mean you can cut it off.
Go ahead. Oh, that's okay. I want to hear it.
Yeah. So this is just because I know your background. So like, I'm not active LDS, but the first 5 years that I was in Flat Earth, I was active LDS, and so I've thought about Flat Earth with that perspective a whole lot. And I haven't seen a support for any other like people who are LDS. So I would like to at some point maybe get a panel together of either current, and it could be active LDS or people who have that background to like help others who are going through the journey who are LDS specifically, and just have like a video online that because I would search that type of thing like Flat Earth and Mormon or Mormonism, or Flat Earth and LDS, and there just wasn't really any information that I found. I thought that could be like an interesting little panel. Maybe it could be an hour or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Just for anybody who has that background.
In Draper, I noticed that there's quite a few of us out who are Latter-day Saints there in Draper, and so one thing I would do want to, I've got that on my production list, is to talk about that. Okay, well, what about Abraham, and what about Moses, and all these
what did Joseph Smith say on it? What about there's a talk by President Kimball that it's like essentially, I think it's called Truth is Truth. And the idea is that absolute truth. Yeah. And so like I'm reading through this, and like he starts off by saying, they used to think that the earth was flat, and now that we know that it's round, and like that was one of the absolute truths. And then it was like, and the other absolute truths are Jesus is the Christ and God is God. And like, I'm like, oh man, like that's really hard for me to have him start that way, because I believe all those other things are absolute truths, but I don't believe that the earth is a globe is an absolute truth. I think that
that's where I was.
Cool, all of us have, you know.
Yeah, and that's where I think he was really just grabbing for a random example. And
it's the example that everybody gives. So it's also confusing because that's the example that the elite would want people to give.
Yeah.
And so the fact that like the prophet is the one choosing that and like pushing that same narrative, or I don't know, like I've thought on this so much, but like in my mind, NASA is like the conspiracy. Like they are when you talk about the Gadianton robbers and like these evil secret combinations, like to me, yes, there's the mafia and there's organized crime like that, but I feel like the most dangerous of them all, and the one that Satan puts the most effort towards, is keeping you from really knowing who you are, and like the NASA propaganda does that so effectively.
Yeah.
And so like it's just like things like this. Oh, go ahead.
With the whole absolute truth thing, is I was catching the spirit of what he was saying. Is that
it was a great talk.
There are certain things out there that are absolutely true. It's not all just a matter of relative truths. Oh, this is only there's no real up and down kind of a claim where it's all relative depending on your perspective. That's not really up, and you might say that's actually down. No, there's an absolute truth of which way is up and which way is down, kind of a thing. And that was what he was talking about. And so I don't necessarily think he was being literal when he was talking about the Earth being absolutely flat or absolutely a globe.
Right.
I don't think that was something he really went and studied into and prayed about or anything like that. It was just, and so that was just an example, a random example that he thought of just throwing into there. And that's just kind of how I have come to understand it. And so I look at when it comes to the Pearl of Great Price, it very specifically talks about how Moses saw every particle of the earth, every particle of the earth, and yet he's the one who described the earth as being flat. And so who am I to argue with Moses? Did President Kimball have this kind of a Moses experience where he saw every particle of the earth? Not that I'm aware of, and I don't think anything President Kimball said trumped what Moses said in the Pearl of Great Price. Moses was the guy who talked about the big firmament being over the earth, right? Yeah, so there's so much. Those are some of the things that, like, You still there? I think I lost you.
I'm here. Did I? I didn't know my audio was cut out. I could hear you the whole time. I was getting a text message that I got yesterday. Okay, so shoot.
Right.
Okay, so like yesterday, I got a text message from someone who's LDS, and they asked me like, "Hey, like, are you LDS?" And I said, "Well, I was active LDS the first 5 years I was into flat Earth." And they said, "What do you think about this verse?" And they, gave me Helaman 5:12, I believe is the reference. I might be off on that, but the one that's like that talks about like how for surely it's the earth that moveth and not the sun, and like it's just. It's helpful to talk to someone else about that, to try to understand that mindset. So, and you made a point just a moment ago I was going to touch on, in my mind, like there's a talk by President Uchtdorf that the restoration is still occurring. Not everything has been restored.
I like that. Yeah.
Right. And so, and like, don't sleep through the restoration was kind of his message. And it's like, I never heard Joseph Smith claim that he saw the beginning from the end. There were specific prophets that were given that revelation. Abraham being one of them, Moses. I believe that Nephi says that he had, from the beginning of the world until the end, and they saw how it was created. But I don't think that Joseph Smith ever had that revelation given to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, he was able to see Moses's version, and he was able to see, Abraham's version, and he pondered a lot.
Yeah, and they matched. They both described the world being created the same way, and they both described a firmament being over the head. And so, yeah, it's. I think that's,
I've been looking for this reference for several years, because back towards the beginning of my journey, I saw a quote, and because I haven't been able to find it again, I'm hesitant to even say it. But the idea was like, Joseph Smith was on he was traveling with his bodyguard. What is his name?
Rockwell.
Yeah, Norman Porter Rockwell.
Porter Rockwell.
And and so like they were having a conversation, and like Porter Rockwell asked him like, hey, have you heard that like the Earth is flat? Like, people believe that. And like Joseph Smith's response to him was, well, I'm pretty sure that science has already settled that, or something. And I was like, that's a really strange quote for the 1830s, like, but I don't know where I saw that. I don't know if it's accurate. I want to like see if I can find, and I've searched for that quote again. I haven't been able to find it and see if it's accurate.
Very fascinating. Yeah.
Because that would just be super insightful. But anyways, I want to do that as a resource, because I still have amazing feelings towards the church, and I'm very grateful for it. And, for 35 of my 35 years of life, that was my foundation, and that's everything. And so like right now with my life circumstances, I just need to take a step away. But that doesn't mean that like I don't love it, and I want to be a resource to other people who might be starting on the path, looking into it and being like, well, like the church teaches that the earth is round and the church is true, so that means that the earth is round, if that makes sense.
Yeah I totally hear you on that. And I think that was kind of I myself kind of went through the whole thing, and I kind of saw it as being conflicting. And then it took an old friend of mine who kind of said, hey, well, we shouldn't just blindly trust everything the prophet says. That's something that we need to pray about. And that's kind of what we're all about, is praying about these things and finding things out for ourselves. We don't ever just, do blind faith in what they say. Prophets are imperfect people. And it's like, oh, wow,
right.
You're totally right. And so that kind of helped me to come around on that. And so, yeah, I left the flat earth movement for a long time until this friend of mine, he went and told me about that. And
really? So you left it for a while?
Yeah, I left it. So there was like the first year.
Because it was inconsistent?
Well, because of the whole absolute truth talk, that whole talk, until I started to, it was that talk. I had this big conversation with them, and so I was like, so I left it because of that. And it wasn't until I could kind of see more into the picture and kind of, is this kind of what you were talking to me about the continuing revelation, the restoration is ongoing, and about how so my friend here, he had an issue with blacks in the priesthood for a long time, and about how the church taught one thing for a long time, and that was just kind of based off of rumor and speculation and things. And then all of a sudden later on, oh, okay, well now I see a bigger picture, and so that's not the case it was. So they corrected themselves on that. And so he asked me, how do you know that this isn't another situation just like that one? And so, and so we can't just, we need to study these things out and find out for ourselves. And throughout this whole experience for me, I've it's been one revelation upon another. I haven't quite got a specific, the earth is flat kind of a revelation, but rather it's been, well, take a look at this information, and take a look at this observation, and take a look at this observation. And so it's a foundation that's been developing in layers. It's not just boom, here it is, or anything like that. And so with other people I've met, I have met people who have had, a strong confirming revelation saying the earth is flat, and which I think it's great for them. awesome. But for me, it's just come in I've had a different experience with it. Just, and I think it's been good for both of us. It's really important to have the both worlds here. You know what I mean? The different kinds of revelation coming in. Yeah, so I'll definitely want to. That's a great topic. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to compile a video about that and talk about that.
And what I like, the way that I would like to do it is like get a little panel together. So that's the way that I would approach it. If you want to approach it that same way, I'd love to be part of the panel. If you want to approach it a different way, then I'll probably put the panel together. And if you want to be on it, I would invite you. Absolutely,
I'd love to do that. And so, just have a contact list. And I think that's kind of one of the interesting things, and that's what I want. I'm trying to get more interviews out with different people I've met from the area, and especially with the Latter-day Saints here, and find out what their approach is and kind of what their feelings are on the matter, and see what they have to say about it. And so I actually have an interview kind of lined up for talking with the St. George Institute of Religion, and kind of talking with their institute teachers about these things and what they have to say about it. And that'll be an interesting thing. I set it up a long time ago, and it just kind of keeps getting pushed back further and further. And so it's but it's on my production list. It's just kind of one of those things that it's there. It's just,
I know you have so many ideas and you have so many videos to make that I
it's stuck in the logjam. Yep. Yeah. So, but I'd love to be a part of that panel, though. Just kind of get together and talk, and that'd be a really great way to get the video going. Is just to sit down with many different people, and that way it's not just one person saying these things, but it's actually multiple people kind of talking about it. And I think there's some
I think that it might be. Well, I think there could be two good videos. One geared more towards people who are already LDS and know the background, so you're not like giving so much basic information. And then another one, maybe the interviewer doesn't know that much about it and is asking questions to the panel. And does that make sense? More for people who are not LDS, but looking at Flat Earth from that perspective. Yeah. So, kind of they would have two different target audiences, but could be helpful for for people who are interested or like investigating the church or wanting to just they're curious, like, can you be a Mormon and a flat earther, like that type of thing.
So that's a great thing to talk about. And so if you can organize a group of people you want to talk about, I'll totally be there. So
since I'll have the meetup on Saturday, I would think like maybe a panel of 4 would be good. So
that'd be cool.
I'll ask a couple of the other people there that I know are LDS if they want to be part of that.
Okay, I think that'd be a really cool thing. Yeah, that's YouTube gold right there. It's because I know that's a major question. A lot of different people out there have major concerns about that right there. And I really enjoy hearing the stories about people and what their experience has been. I know for me, myself, I went and talked to my bishop about this, and because one person was making accusations against me, saying I'm out there preaching false doctrine, and I'm not. This is right here in our scriptures. You can't say I'm preaching false doctrine when it's right here in our Bible and right here in our Pearl of Great Price. And so there's no false doctrine about that. And so all of that was resolved. And so that's the important thing.
I had someone, that person that asked me yesterday about Helaman, we ended up having a phone call, and he asked me if I had ever been like brought into the bishop's office or anything because of that. And I said, no, I would bring up Flat Earth almost always in the context that if we want to understand the scriptures and what they were saying, we need to understand that they believed the earth was flat. And then that, I wasn't saying I believe the earth is flat. I was saying they believed it was. And then I could get into their mindset and what it was like, if that makes sense. It was like, it was more of like a historical lesson instead of, the kids, the young men going home and being like, yeah, Matt told us the earth is flat today. Like, I can see that being problematic in the ward. But
Yeah.
you know, if it's like, oh yeah, we want to understand the scriptures, and because they believed it was flat, and we also believed they were prophets, you know, like kind of like subtly dropping the breadcrumbs instead of shoving the sandwich
it's not
down
something
there.
I bring up in church. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't something I would do often, but like it was every once in a while. Like, you know, I would, and that's the way that I always approached it, and I never had any issues that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, it's something that I've kind of thought about doing in the past, but I haven't quite ever made the push to end up doing it, because I think in just the flat Earth community in general, there's a lot of kind of, oh, well, you're a Latter-day Saint, that means you're a Mason, and all these things like that. And I'm like, no. And people don't quite realize that Joseph Smith was actually murdered by Masons. So that's a kind of a significant point right there for me. And so, So I don't want it to be a dividing thing, and I'm trying to be very inclusive. And so, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll get that together, and I'll let you know when we're going to do it.
Okay. Well, thanks again. It's been a pleasure having you. You're a very interesting person to talk to, that's for sure. And so, keep me informed on your future your meetups, and if you've got any video footage. I know you don't do a YouTube channel yourself, but if you got any video footage during your meetups or any major news announcements, I'd be more than happy to post them. So just keep me informed.
Yeah. So we have our meetup this Saturday. I'm not expecting you to make it. And then the next big one we're doing, I think, is on April 23rd. That'll be the same, like kind of the same thing where we had it at that rec center, and you know, inviting people from a little bit further away. I'm hopeful, but that by December it's kind of like the next, you know, like Flattoberfest kind of a thing, like for Western United States. You know, Salt Lake is really centrally located to a lot of the West. Like when Real Salt Lake built their big soccer stadium, they were like saying all the benefits of that, like people from Seattle, San Francisco, LA, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Denver. It's super central for all of that. And so, and it's usually
the
pretty
crossroads of the West, right?
Yeah, it really is. So I'm thinking that would be a great place to do it. So, you know, I want to do one more and kind of nail down our routine, and then, you know, then make it bigger and make it like a big conference type of a thing, or at least like once or twice a year.
I love the learning process of it all. We've done these things in the past, and I think that's really important to remember when it comes to kind of helping other people in other areas to develop those themselves. Is kind of people want to know your tips about what's worked really well for you when it comes to organizing the meet and greets, and things that you didn't quite work out so well, and things you want to avoid, kind of lessons learned. That's really important. So if you're to start a YouTube channel, I'd definitely talk about that. So, or even just talk about it in your podcast.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
This video has been brought to you by the Flat Earth Institute of Science. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see some other fun interviews we've had, come check out our playlist.